Hello everyone, my name is Jessie and welcome to Plot Twists. Next we're going to talk about my top 10 books of the year. I have ranked these in order from 10 to 1, but I really think this is a little more fluid than that. There are definitely some that are effectively in the same category. But anyway, starting with number 10, we have Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is actually the first book that I finished in 2021 and definitely a good way to start the year. This book centers around our main character of Alex, who is the son of the President of the United States. He ends up in an altercation with one of the princes of the UK named Henry, and in order to improve public relations, their parents highly encourage them to develop a friendship, and that friendship naturally just develops into something a little bit more. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I don't want to call this a trope, but one of the things in books that I definitely enjoy the most is when books incorporate emails, text messages, articles, anything that isn't just straight text into the book. And this definitely includes multiple text conversations and emails, and I really enjoyed that about this book. Also, the two characters are, in general, just super likable, and I really enjoyed the way that the story develops. So, with that, number 10. Coming in at number 9, we have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This centers around our main character of Kaya, and Kaya has had an extremely hard life. Over the course of the story, you definitely get to see how she grew up, and this is wholeheartedly a coming-of-age story. But the main center around this story is Kaya's accused of murdering a local, extremely popular boy in their community, and because she has lived for so long off the grid, and the main meat of the story is the reader trying to figure out, did she kill this man, and watching the court case evolve. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is definitely a little out of my wheelhouse and not something I would typically read, but I actually really enjoyed it. I've heard lots of people in the booktube community talk about it, and they're absolutely correct. This book is excellent. Coming in at number 8, we have A Man Called Uwe by Frederik Backman. This was not the first Frederik Backman novel that I read this year. I also listened to Anxious People on audiobook, but this novel at points had me in tears. So on the surface, Uwe is definitely your typical grumpy old man character. And as the story kind of develops, you get to see his background, his entire life, how he ends up where he is. I will say that this book definitely has a trigger warning for suicide, and that is a central theme of the novel. Uwe, near the beginning, his wife has fairly recently passed away, and he has decided that he has wrapped up everything that needs to be wrapped up in his life, and he is ready to die. This book is definitely emotional in all sorts of ways. It had me laughing, it had me crying, and it definitely had me reading more Frederik Backman. So if you haven't picked up one of his novels, I highly recommend this. Coming in at number 7, we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book also has trigger warnings for suicide. Yeah, so this centers around our main character of Nora, who at the beginning of this book has attempted suicide, and as a result ends up in the Midnight Library, which is a library with a collection of books from various points in her life. She's also given by the Midnight Librarian a list of all of the things in her life that she regrets, and is given an opportunity to pick any of these books, which are a variety of different what-ifs relating to her regrets, and is told, you can go into this particular story. When you finally find the one that you're meant to be in, you'll be allowed to stay. Other than that, the book will eventually kick you out. And the book kind of just develops Nora going through the various regrets that she's had in her life and seeing what would happen if she had made a different decision. This book definitely has some very strong themes, but it really is very reflective. And it definitely makes you think about your life and the way that you view regrets. I also really enjoyed Nora's character development. She's almost a completely different person from the beginning of this book to the end, and the author does a really good job of doing that in a very organic way. Okay, moving on. With number 6, we're going to talk about Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of his novels within the Cosmere, and if you're looking for a spot to get into Brandon Sanderson, I think I personally recommend starting here. So this centers around a ragtag group of characters, the main character of which is Ben, who is a teenage assassin. I don't know if assassin's quite the right word, but I'm going to roll with it. And this ragtag group of characters basically decides that they are going to overthrow the ruler of their particular area for one reason or another. This book definitely has a lot of political intrigue. It has some really interesting characters. The development is fantastic. I really don't have a serious qualm to even begin to mention about this book. It's definitely high fantasy, and while it is a 3-book series, it definitely has implications to a larger universe, so if that's something that appeals to you, I would definitely recommend this as well. Okay, moving on. For number 5, I wanted to mention White Fragility by DiAngelo. My husband and I actually listened to this in the car on audiobook on the way home from a trip, and both of us, 1, really enjoyed it, but 2, it inspired a lot of conversation along the way about racism and the white perspective in America and kind of sort of how everything has developed. And there were definitely a lot of things mentioned that were things that we had never thought about. I don't know, if you're looking for a book to kind of introduce you to topics regarding systemic racism, as long as you're willing to go into this with an open mind, which you absolutely should, this book is definitely going to challenge a lot of your beliefs in a really beneficial way. Moving on to number 4, we could not get through this list without talking about Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I am pumped for the next book to come out. So this book centers around our main character of Bree Matthews, who is, in the beginning of this book, attending a early college. One night on campus, she sees something that she's not quite supposed to, and quickly gets involved in a mystery behind an Arthurian legend secret society on campus. This book has magic, this book has intrigue, this book has excellent character development. The magic system is really interesting, and it definitely has a twist in it that I wholeheartedly did not see coming at all whatsoever. If you somehow have managed to stay in the booktube community and have not picked this up and like fantasy even the teeniest bit, I highly, highly recommend you pick this up. Coming in at number 3 on our list, nobody who has watched my channel in the past year should be surprised, but we're going to talk about House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So this centers our main character of Linus, who is a sort of social worker for magical creatures in this society. One day he gets sent on the biggest case of his life to the house where the most dangerous magical children live in this particular world. Linus is definitely afraid at first and nervous about meeting all of these kids, but quickly begins to develop a relationship with them, as well as the caretaker of these particular kids, whose name is Arthur. As a psychologist, this book warmed my heart. It definitely appeals to the idea that kids are more than the summation of their actions or their parents or where they come from. And regardless of what you've heard at the end of the day, they're still kids. I don't know, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I definitely will be picking up anything that TJ Klune writes in the future because this book was just so, so, so good. I recommended this to so many people, and I have yet to have somebody come back and say, oh, I really didn't enjoy this book. If you haven't picked this up, I cannot recommend this enough. So coming in at number 2 on this list is kind of cheating the list, but I'm actually going to include a short series here, and that's going to be Mistborn Era 2 by Brandon Sanderson. Now, when I set out to write this list, I told myself I wasn't going to include 2 novels by one particular author, but because I read so much Brandon Sanderson last year, and I don't think I could get through this list without talking about this, I had to include 2. So, Mistborn Era 2 is a 3-book series centering in, like, the Wild West, but with magic. In essence, it does not seem like anything that I would particularly enjoy. In theory. None of the back of the book did not appeal to me. The idea that we were going to the Wild West is not necessarily a setting that I find interesting, and yet this is easily my favorite of the Brandon Sanderson that I read this year. They are also some of his shorter novels, and I don't know if maybe that had any impact as well. So this particular series centers around our 2 main characters of Wax and Wayne, who are kind of sort of bounty hunters, outlaws, however you want to look at it. In this particular society, they are very well known. One day, Wax inherits the head of a house in this particular society because he has a relative that passes away, and the story kind of evolves from there. There is a lot of trauma that's discussed in this particular book or across the series, and I do really feel like it's done in a very beneficial way. The way it's talked about, I think, is very helpful. It's realistic. I don't know. By far, my favorite series that I read this year. I'm coming in at number 1. Literally nobody should be surprised if you've been following my channel, but I'm going to talk about The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This novel really centers around the life of Evelyn Hugo, who has had 7 husbands across her lifetime for various reasons, and has really never told the press any of the background behind any of these things. Evelyn is getting older in age, and she decides that she is going to do her tell-all, and picks a relatively unknown reporter whose name is Monique. This book definitely centers around Evelyn Hugo's life evolving, but also there's a reoccurring question in the book of why is she telling this to Monique, this unknown reporter? This book, in my opinion, has everything that you could ever possibly want in a story. And I feel very strongly that there is not a person out there that could not benefit from the lessons in this story. This book talks about love and loss and coming into your own and learning to be yourself, and all of the lessons that Evelyn learns over the course of her lifetime are 100% applicable to literally anyone who might pick up this novel. If you somehow have not read this yet, if you only pick one novel off of this list, I highly recommend that one. Alright guys, so that wraps up my top 10 books of the year. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I try to post content every 5 days or so, but at least once a week. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Bye!